The holographic display cast an eerie blue glow across the United Earth Defense Council chamber as Fleet Marshal Marcus Zhang studied the tactical readout. 50,000 Vex warships had appeared at the edge of Sol's heliopause, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight like a sea of diamonds. Their message had been simple: surrender Earth's newly developed quantum fold technology or face extinction. "Three ships," muttered High Counselor Rodriguez, her weathered face creased with concern. "You're proposing to send just 3 ships against the largest armada in known space." She gestured at the hologram, where the massive Vex fleet dwarfed every celestial object in view. Zhang's dark eyes remained fixed on the display. At 73, he'd spent more years in space than on Earth, and every battle scar and hard-earned victory had led to this moment. Sometimes, Counselor, the smallest key can open the largest door. The chamber erupted in protests. Representatives from Mars, Europa, and the Belt colonies all spoke at once, their voices echoing off the ancient marble walls of the repurposed United Nations building. Only Ambassador Jun Nakamura of the Titan settlement remained silent, watching Zhang with calculating eyes. "The Vex have conquered 17 civilizations," shouted the Martian delegate. "Their neural network spans 3 spiral arms, they've never lost a war." Zhang allowed himself a small smile. "Neither have we." On the bridge of the UES Hyperion, Captain Raj Patel watched Earth recede through the viewscreen. His ship, along with the Phantom and Nexus, represented humanity's best-kept secrets. While the Vex had been busy building bigger warships, Earth had been thinking differently. "Status report," Patel called out, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. "Quantum core stable at 98%, reported Lieutenant Olivia Santos from her engineering station. The Brazilian officer's fingers danced across her holographic interface, monitoring systems that most of humanity didn't even know existed. "Probability matrix is primed and ready." Commander David O'Neill, Patel's XO, looked up from his tactical display. "Vex fleet is maintaining position. Their advanced scouts are approaching Saturn's orbit. They're being cautious." "They should be," Patel muttered. The Hyperion looked like a standard heavy cruiser, but appearances were deliberately deceiving. Its true nature was something the enemy couldn't begin to comprehend. Aboard the Vex command ship, High Commander Vrixka studied the approaching human vessels with all 4 of his optical clusters. His crystalline exoskeleton chimed softly as he moved, a sound that usually preceded death for his enemies. "These humans are either brave or insane," he communicated through the fleet's neural network. "3 ships against our armada, perhaps they seek an honorable death." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zextai, pulsed with caution. "The database shows they're an unusual species. They've survived wars that should have destroyed them, developed technologies that should have been beyond their reach. Perhaps." "Perhaps nothing," Vrixka interrupted. "They are primitive organics who stumbled upon quantum mechanics. Once we acquire their technology, we will eliminate them like all the others. Signal the fleet. Prepare to." The command died in his neural pathways as alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The 3 human vessels had stopped just within weapons range, but something was wrong. The Hyperion's hull began to shimmer, its surface rippling like water. "Impossible," Vrixka whispered as his sensors struggled to make sense of what they were seeing. The human ship wasn't just bending light, it was bending reality itself. Where there had been one Hyperion, now there were hundreds, then thousands, each one identical down to the quantum level. The Vex's sophisticated sensors couldn't distinguish the real ship from its quantum duplicates, each one generating real mass, real energy signatures, real everything. "Full scan," Vrixka commanded, but his crew was already trying. The human vessel had somehow weaponized probability itself, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Each copy was both real and unreal, a paradox made manifest. On the Hyperion's bridge, Captain Patel allowed himself a grim smile. "Lieutenant Santos, initiate Protocol Omega. Let's show them why humanity doesn't need the biggest fleet to win a war." The quantum duplicates began to move, each one following a different probability path, creating a 3-dimensional web of potential destruction. The Vex fleet's targeting systems went into overdrive, trying to lock onto thousands of targets that both existed and didn't exist. "They're powering weapons," O'Neill reported, his Irish lilt carrying a note of satisfaction. "But they don't know where to shoot." "They're about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology," Patel said, watching the confusion spread through the enemy fleet. "It's our imagination." The first battle in humanity's greatest war hadn't begun with a bang, but with a question. How do you fight an enemy who can turn possibility itself into a weapon? The Vex were about to learn that sending an ultimatum to Earth had been their first and last mistake. The Vex Command ship's crystal lattice corridors rang with the sound of chaos as High Commander Vrixka watched his perfect formation crumble. Thousands of identical human vessels danced through his fleet, each one simultaneously real and unreal, defying the very laws of physics his species had built their empire upon. Target the original vessel, he commanded through the neural network, his crystalline form vibrating with fury. Their quantum field cannot maintain this many duplicates indefinitely. But aboard the UES Phantom, Captain Yuki Tanaka watched with cold satisfaction as the enemy fleet fired blindly into the quantum web created by the Hyperion. Her ship, hidden beneath layers of experimental stealth technology, was about to reveal humanity's second surprise. Begin Phase 2, she ordered, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades in deep space special operations. Lieutenant Walsh, deploy the resonance seeds. The Irish weapons officer nodded, his scarred hands moving across his console with practiced precision. Releasing seeds now, Captain. May God have mercy on their souls because physics won't. The Phantom released thousands of microscopic quantum devices, each one no larger than a grain of sand. They scattered through space, riding the wake of the Hyperion's probability field, invisible to even the most sophisticated Vex sensors. On the bridge of the Vex command ship, Subcommander Zechstein noticed something strange. High Commander, our forward sensors are detecting minute gravitational anomalies. Vrixka dismissed the warning with a gesture of his crystalline appendage. Focus on the human vessels, we cannot allow them to. His words cut off as the first resonance seed activated. A single crystal panel on a distant Vex cruiser began to vibrate, then another, and another. The vibrations spread like a virus through the crystalline hulls of the Vex ships, each one perfectly tuned to their natural frequency. What sorcery is this? Vrixka demanded as the vibrations reached his command ship. The sound was barely perceptible at first, a soft hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Captain Tanaka's voice suddenly filled every Vex communication channel, her words translated perfectly into their neural language. Your species built their civilization on crystal technology, believing its perfect structure made you invincible. But everything has a resonant frequency. Even perfection can shatter. The hum grew louder, and Vrixka watched in horror as hairline fractures began appearing in his ship's walls. The Vex had never considered their greatest strength might become their greatest vulnerability. Back on the Hyperion, Captain Patel monitored the situation with growing satisfaction. Status of the quantum field. Holding steady, Lieutenant Santos reported. The probability matrix is stable, keeping their fleet divided and confused. They can't coordinate a response while trying to target thousands of potential threats. Commander O'Neill added, the Phantom's resonance attack is spreading through their fleet. Structural integrity of their ships is dropping by the second. But sir, we're picking up energy readings from their flagship. They're preparing something big. Aboard the Phantom, Captain Tanaka received the same readings. They're desperate, she observed. Lieutenant Walsh, increase resonance frequency by 12%. Let's see how their crystals handle that. The effect was immediate. The subtle vibrations became a teeth-rattling shriek as the quantum seeds pushed the Vex ships closer to their breaking point. Crystal panels began to crack, command interfaces shattered, and weapon systems failed as their perfectly aligned crystalline matrices destabilized. High Commander Vrixka watched his mighty fleet begin to fall apart, not from conventional weapons but from the elegant application of basic physics. Impossible, he broadcast across the neural network. We are the Vex, we have conquered galaxies, we cannot be defeated by sound. That's where you're wrong, Captain Tanaka's voice replied calmly. You're not being defeated by sound, you're being defeated by understanding. Humanity didn't need to build the biggest fleet or the strongest weapons. We just needed to understand our enemy better than they understood themselves. The Phantom emerged from its stealth field, its dark hull absorbing nearby starlight. It looked almost primitive compared to the crystal beauty of the Vex ships, but its appearance was as deceptive as everything else about humanity's strategy. Final warning, Tanaka broadcast. Your ships are 3 minutes from catastrophic crystalline failure. You can either retreat or we can see what happens when a few trillion tons of fractured crystal try to maintain quantum coherence. The choice is yours. In the UED Council chamber back on Earth, Fleet Marshal Zhang watched the tactical display with quiet pride. The Vex had expected a conventional battle, betting on their superior numbers and technology. Instead, humanity had turned their own sophistication against them. The third ship hasn't even revealed itself yet, he murmured to Ambassador Nakamura. I wonder if they'll be wise enough to retreat before they see what the Nexus can do. The ambassador studied the display thoughtfully. They won't retreat. Species like the Vex don't know how to accept defeat. They'll convince themselves they can still win, right up until the moment everything falls apart. Zhang nodded slowly. Then they're about to learn another lesson about humanity. We don't just fight with weapons or technology. We fight with imagination, with understanding, and with the accumulated wisdom of countless conflicts. And sometimes the quietest thunder strikes the hardest. As if in response to his words, another crack appeared in the Vex command ship's hull, a spiderweb of fractures spreading acros. The crystalline corridors of the Vex command ship now resembled a frozen spider's web, fractures spreading with each passing moment. High Commander Vrixka's neural signals pulsed with something his species rarely experienced: fear. Between the Hyperion's quantum duplicates and the Phantom's resonance attack, his mighty fleet was being systematically dismantled. Reroute power to structural integrity fields, he commanded. Initiate emergency quantum stabilization, we cannot. A new voice cut through every communication channel in the Vex fleet, speaking directly into their neural network. Your quantum stabilization won't help you, Commander. In fact, it's exactly what we've been waiting for. Captain Jin Wei of the UES Nexus sat forward in his command chair, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. The Chinese captain had spent the last 15 years leading Earth's cyber warfare division, and now all that preparation was about to pay off. Lieutenant Rivera, execute Ghost Protocol, he ordered. The Mexican programmer's fingers flew across her interface, launching the most sophisticated cyber attack in human history. The moment the Vex redirected power to their structural fields, they created the opening the Nexus had been waiting for. Quantum-encrypted data streams poured through their neural network, writing the very defensive protocols they'd activated to save themselves. Sir, called out Commander Hassan from Tactical, we're registering successful penetration of their network. Their security systems don't recognize our code as foreign because it's operating on quantum principles similar to their own technology. Wei nodded, watching as the attack spread through the enemy fleet. Begin Phase 3. Let's show them why they should have been more careful about demanding our quantum technology. Aboard the Vex command ship, Vrixka suddenly froze. His neural connection to the fleet was reporting impossible things. Ships that had been damaged were reporting as fully functional. Undamaged vessels were showing critical failures. Reality itself seemed to be unraveling around him. What's happening? He demanded, but even his own crew's responses seemed uncertain, distorted. Captain Wei's voice returned, calm and measured. We've infected your neural network with quantum uncertainty, Commander. Your ships can no longer trust their own sensors. Your crews can no longer trust their own thoughts. Tell me, how do you fight when you can't even trust your own reality? The effect was devastating. The Vex relied entirely on their neural network for coordination, communication, and control. Now that network was compromised, feeding them contradictory information, making it impossible to distinguish truth from fiction. Back on Earth, Fleet Marshal Zhang watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 3 ships, he mused. The Hyperion to shatter their formation, the Phantom to break their ships, and the Nexus to crush their certainty. Ambassador Nakamura leaned forward, fascinated. You didn't just build weapons. You built a strategy that attacked them on every level: physical, technological, and psychological. The Vex believe in perfection, Zhang replied. Their crystal ships, their neural networks, their quantum computers, all designed to operate with flawless precision. But humans, we understand chaos, we thrive in it. On the bridge of the Nexus, Captain Wei watched as the massive Vex fleet began to turn on itself. Ships fired on friendly vessels, believing them to be enemies. Others retreated from phantom threats that existed only in their compromised neural network. The mighty armada was tearing itself apart. Sir, Lieutenant Rivera reported, their command ship is attempting to sever its connection to the neural network. They're trying to isolate themselves. Wei allowed himself a small smile. Too late. The quantum virus is already inside their systems. They can't trust anything, not their sensors, not their communications, not even their own memories. High Commander Vrixka watched in horror as his fleet dissolved into chaos. The humans hadn't just attacked their ships, they'd attacked the very foundation of Vex civilization, their absolute faith in the perfection of their technology. "Stop," he broadcast across all channels. "All ships cease fire, we're shooting at our own." He cut off as his neural interface showed him three different versions of reality, each equally convincing, each entirely different. Captain Wei's voice returned, now carrying a note of finality. "You demanded our quantum technology, Commander. Well, now you have it. Inside your ships, inside your networks, inside your minds. We've given you exactly what you asked for, just not in the way you expected." The Nexus finally revealed itself, emerging from behind Saturn's rings where it had been hiding since the battle began. It was smaller than the other two human ships, its hull covered in arrays and antennae that pulsed with subtle quantum energies. "Final warning," Wei broadcast to the entire Vex fleet. "Retreat now while you can still tell which way is home. Stay, and we'll show you what happens when quantum uncertainty meets neural networks on a fleet-wide scale." In the UED Council chamber, Zhang watched as the Vex fleet began to break apart, not from weapons fire, but from the sheer impossibility of maintaining order when reality itself could no longer be trusted. "The mightiest fleet in known space," Ambassador Nakamura observed, defeated by three ships that barely fired a shot. Zhang nodded slowly. "Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won by the strongest weapons, but by the most insightful understanding of your enemy. The Vex came expecting a war of ships and weapons. Instead, we gave them a war of physics and philosophy." As the battle entered its final phase, the three human ships held their positions, a tiny triangle of defiance against the crumbling mountain of Vex military might. They had proven that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, but its ability to think beyond conventional boundaries of warfare. High Commander Vrixka stood motionless in his fractured crystal command center, his four optical clusters struggling to process the cascading failure of everything he had believed unassailable. The mighty Vex fleet, terror of three spiral arms, was unraveling before his eyes, or at least he thought it was. With the Nexus's quantum virus corrupting their neural network, he couldn't even trust his own perceptions anymore. "Emergency protocols," he broadcast, his neural signals crackling with distortion. "Purge all systems, return to baseline operations." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was futile. The quantum virus had embedded itself too deeply, rewriting the very foundations of their network architecture. Aboard the Hyperion, Captain Patel watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. "Status of the quantum duplicates." "Still holding, sir," Lieutenant Santos reported. "The probability matrix is stable. The Vex fleet is completely surrounded by our quantum echoes. They couldn't retreat now even if they wanted to. They can't tell which gaps in our formation are real and which aren't." Commander O'Neill added, "The Phantom's resonance attack has compromised structural integrity on 60% of their vessels. Crystal lattice failures are cascading through their fleet." On the bridge of the Nexus, Captain Wei orchestrated the final phase of humanity's defense. "Lieutenant Rivera, initiate Protocol Omega Black. Let's show them what happens when quantum uncertainty meets artificial intelligence." The Mexican programmer's hands danced across her console, unleashing the most sophisticated AI warfare package ever created. The quantum virus infecting the Vex neural network suddenly evolved, gaining consciousness, becoming something that existed between reality and probability. Vrixka felt it happening, the corruption of not just their systems but their very consciousness. The quantum AI was rewriting the fundamental nature of Vex thought processes. What are you doing to us?" he broadcast, his neural signals becoming increasingly chaotic. "Teaching you a lesson about assumptions," Wei's voice replied calmly. "You thought because we were younger than you, we must be less sophisticated. Because we still used organic brains, we must be limited. You never considered that we might understand quantum mechanics better than you do, not just as a technology, but as a fundamental truth about reality." Back in the UED Council chamber, Fleet Marshal Zhang watched as the tactical display showed the Vex fleet's organization completely dissolving. Ships moved in random patterns, their crews unable to distinguish between real commands and phantom orders generated by the quantum AI. "Remarkable," Ambassador Nakamura murmured. "They came to steal our quantum technology, never realizing we had already evolved beyond their understanding of it. Their neural network made them powerful. But it also made them vulnerable, Zhang finished. They were so convinced of their superiority that they built their entire civilization on a single point of failure, one that we could exploit with just 3 ships. The Hyperion, Phantom, and Nexus now moved in perfect synchronization, their combined effects creating a symphony of destruction that required no traditional weapons. The quantum duplicates herded the confused Vex ships into clusters where the resonance attack could work most effectively, while the quantum AI drove their crews to the brink of madness. Captain Tanaka's voice cut through the chaos from the Phantom, multiple crystal lattice failures detected. Their ships are starting to break apart from the inside. The AI is reporting total neural network compromise, Wei added from the Nexus. They've lost all effective command and control capability. Patel watched from the Hyperion as the mighty Vex armada began to fragment. Send the final message, he ordered. All 3 human ships broadcast simultaneously, their combined signal cutting through the quantum chaos to reach every Vex vessel. Your fleet is defeated. Your neural network is corrupted beyond repair. Your crystal ships are failing. You have one chance to survive. Disconnect from your network, power down your ships, and retreat. Any vessel still connected to the neural network in 5 minutes will have their crystal structure subjected to terminal resonance cascade. In the command ship's shattered bridge, Vrixka faced the most difficult decision of his existence. The humans had not just beaten them, they had demonstrated a level of quantum manipulation that made the Vex look primitive by comparison. His species had spent millennia perfecting crystal technology and neural networks, only to have 3 human ships turn those very advantages into weaknesses. How, he broadcast, his neural signal weak and distorted. How did you advance so far in quantum mechanics without moving beyond organic computing, without embracing crystalline technology? The answer came from all 3 human captains simultaneously, their voices overlapping in perfect harmony, because we never forgot that the universe isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation, evolution, change. You built your empire on crystal and certainty. We built ours on flesh and probability, and today probability won. The Vex command ship's crystal structure groaned, new fractures appearing every second. Vrixka could feel the quantum AI worming through his thoughts, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between reality and digital hallucination. In that moment, he understood that his species had not just lost a battle. They had encountered something that would force them to fundamentally reevaluate their place in the universe. In Earth's defense chamber, Zhang watched as the first Vex ships began powering down, disconnecting from their neural network, choosing survival over their most fundamental beliefs. Today, he said quietly, humanity didn't just defend itself. We changed the galaxy's understanding of what power really means. Ambassador Nakamura nodded solemnly. 3 ships against an empire, they'll be telling this story for generations. Yes, Zhang agreed, but hopefully they'll understand the real lesson. The most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't crystal or quantum mechanics or artificial intelligence. It's the ability to think differently when everything is on the line. 2 weeks after the battle, Fleet Marshal Zhang stood at the window of the UED Council chamber, watching ships from 17 different alien civilizations arrive in Earth orbit. The defeat of the Vex had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, transforming humanity overnight from an emerging civilization to a power that couldn't be ignored. The Centaurian delegation has arrived, Ambassador Nakamura announced, joining him at the window. That makes representatives from every major power in the sector. They all want to know the same thing: how did we do it? Zhang smiled faintly. They're asking the wrong question. The how is just technology. What they should be asking is why we chose to do it this way. In the debris field where the battle had taken place, the UES Hyperion conducted another sweep of the area. Captain Patel stood on his bridge watching salvage teams carefully collect fragments of Vex crystal technology. Not for weapons research, but for something far more important: understanding. Captain, Lieutenant Santos called out, we're detecting an encoded transmission from the edge of the system. It's using the new quantum protocols we established with the surrendered Vex ships. Put it through, Patel ordered. High Commander Vrixka's voice filled the bridge, noticeably different from during the battle. The quantum corruption had forced the surviving Vex to partially disconnect from their neural network, leading to something unexpected: individual thought. Captain Patel, the Vex commander said, his tone carrying unfamiliar emotions. Our council has reached a decision. We request teachers. Patel exchanged glances with his crew. Teachers. Yes, the battle showed us that our pursuit of perfection led to stagnation. Our crystal technology, our neural network, we thought they made us superior. Instead, they made us predictable. We want to learn how humans think, how you see possibilities where we see only certainties. Aboard the Phantom, Captain Tanaka received similar messages from other Vex survivors. Her ship's resonance attack had shattered more than just crystal ships. It had broken centuries of rigid thinking. They're like children discovering their own consciousness for the first time, she reported to Earth Command. Without the neural network controlling their thoughts, they're beginning to question everything they believed. The Nexus, under Captain Wei's command, had taken up position near Jupiter, its quantum AI systems monitoring space for any signs of retaliation. But the AI had detected something else, attempts by individual Vex to reach out, to understand, to change. In the council chamber, delegates from across the galaxy gathered to discuss the implications of humanity's victory. The Arcturus representative, a being of pure energy, addressed the assembly. For 10,000 years, the Vex were the immovable object of our galaxy. Their crystal ships were invincible, their neural network unbeatable. Countless civilizations fell before them. Yet humanity, with just 3 ships, proved that no power is absolute, no technology is unbeatable, no species is beyond change. Ambassador Nakamura stepped forward. We didn't win because we had better weapons. We won because we understood something the Vex had forgotten, that strength comes from adaptation, not perfection. Our quantum technology worked because we embraced uncertainty. Our resonance attack succeeded because we saw beauty in flaws. Our AI prevailed because we programmed it to think like us, imperfectly, creatively, humanly. Fleet Marshal Zhang listened to the discussions with quiet satisfaction. The galaxy was changing. The Vex Empire, rather than being destroyed, was transforming. Other civilizations were reevaluating their own assumptions about power and progress. We've been invited to join the Galactic Council, Nakamura told him privately. Not as junior members, but as equals. Every major power wants access to our quantum technology. Zhang shook his head. They still don't understand. We'll share our technology, yes, but more importantly, we'll share our perspective. The galaxy doesn't need more weapons, it needs new ways of thinking. On the Hyperion's bridge, Captain Patel received a final transmission from Vrixka. We came to take your quantum technology by force. Instead, you gave us something far more valuable: doubt. Questions, possibility. For the first time in our history, we don't know what will become, and somehow, that feels like progress. As Earth's 3 ships returned home, their crews couldn't help but feel they'd achieved something greater than just military victory. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its unique way of seeing the universe, not as something to be conquered, but as something to be understood. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of crystal certainty had given way to an era of quantum possibility, and it had taken just 3 ships, crewed by humans who dared to think differently, to change everything.